Hello? Hello? Well, let's get started. First, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight and giving you a warm welcome to Next Chapter in Wayzata Community Church. Glad you're here. Let me give you just a little bit of background, some kind of housekeeping details. So for those that haven't been here before, Next Chapter was started about a year ago with some of the people in this room, John Hallberg and others, uh, really to provide resources and support for those people to successfully transition to their next stage of life. And there's a lot of next stages of life, as we all know: retirement, loss of a loved one, divorce, and so on. So that's our goal, and we're trying to provide the resources for that. So we do monthly presentations here, and we tape them all so they're all available. So if you go to our website, you could see Alan Page, you could see Will Steger, you could see Richard Leiter. There's a lot of really great presentations on there. And they're free to use, share them wherever you can. We do get a lot of people going to the website to watch those, so I hope you will as well. So for tonight, the presentation will go about an hour. Clancy's going to take questions during the presentation instead of just afterwards. So Bart in the red sweater and I will, if you have a question, raise your hand and we'll come to you. So afterwards, Clancy is also signing his 2 books, and he'll tell you more about that. So after the presentation, there'll be refreshments. We encourage you to stay for some fellowship and discuss the presentation, and he'll sign those books. So we also take a free will offering. There's never going to be a charge for anything we do, but if you're so inclined, there are a couple of baskets on your way out. So I want to quick tell you about our next speaker, who's named Marianne Johnson. She will be here on January 11th. We're going to take a hiatus for the holidays, but she'll be here on the 11th. And she's a pretty amazing woman, and I'm really excited about her presentation. So her topic is aging with resiliency mindfully. So tongue twister, but that's what it is. She's a mindfulness instructor at the Bakken Center at the U of M and a very well-known speaker, and I think that's going to be pretty inspiring. So Clancy Clark is our speaker for tonight, and the reason I really thought he would be key for Next Chapter is I saw a television interview with Clancy, who I didn't know at the time, and what I was really amazed at is his story is really powerful. He's got a 3-decade successful sales career, and he's inspired now to help other people kind of live their dreams. So the thing that most impressed me about his interview was the fact that he had taken some real inspiration from his dog, who he'll talk about that, I'm sure. So I thought, wow, I don't have a dog, but I do have a cat. And so I wonder if I could get some of that inspiration and so on from my cat. So the play cats is one of my favorite, and Mistopheles is the old wise cat. Well, my cat's 22, and I'm quite sure he'll outlive me. He's now in my will with my thousands of Q-tips and coffee filters. So somebody will be inheriting him. So what I did is I said, okay, well, if Clancy was able to find that inspiration by watching his dog, what can I get from watching my cat? So I've observed him very carefully for the last number of weeks to try and say, what can I learn from you? Well, first thing I learned is that he eats a lot and he eats frequently. So check for me. He probably got that from me, but nonetheless, that was the first thing I saw. The second thing I saw was that he sleeps a lot, and when he's not sleeping, he's resting to build up the energy to go to the food bowl again. So I'm not sure that's going to help me either. And the last thing he does is he loves to chase squirrels. Never caught one. Never caught anything, as a matter of fact. He's very frightened of mice. So if there's ever one in the house, he hides until I catch it. And so he's never caught one. So I'm trying to say, well, what's the lesson from that? And I thought, well, maybe it's less about winning and more about the effort. Or always chase your dreams and never give up. I don't know. But in any event, I think cats aren't as effective as dogs. So hopefully you have a dog that you can learn from. The other thing is Clancy's a relatively new resident to Minnesota, and I'm sure he'll talk a little bit about what inspired him to move here. And I'm quite sure it wasn't to have a firsthand experience of wind chill, but you never know. So without further ado, let me introduce Clancy, and we'll get started. Thank you.
Thank you. What is the most important thing in life? I like it. Audience participation already. Hold that thought, please. I'm grateful to be here tonight. And first, I want to acknowledge my book publicist, Rachel Anderson. There she is. Thank you, Rachel, for being here. Rachel works tirelessly for me to help me promote my message and believes in what we're doing. And, it's amazing to me that when I'm living on purpose, I launched this platform in 2021. Love Your Work, Live Your Dream was released in January of 2022. And when I'm living on purpose, and my motives are pure to help other people to be fulfilled and live their best lives, the right people show up, everything falls into place. And Rachel showed up at the right time, and she has worked tirelessly to help me promote the message, and she's a large part of the reason I'm here tonight. And I want to thank Jim and Joel and Rick and everyone here at the Wayzata Community Church for having me. I just had to segue. You reminded me, Jim, of a cat story, so I'm just going to go right into it. There were two cats out in this alley, and there was a young kitten and this old alley cat that had lived out there all his life. And this young kitten was chasing its tail. You've seen a cat do that, right? They chase and chase and chase and chase. And the old cat comes up to him and says, what are you doing? He says, well, I've just been to cat philosophy school. And I've learned that there are two things that are important to a cat. Number one is that happiness is the most important thing for a cat. And number two is that happiness is located in my tail. And so what I've learned is that if I chase and chase and chase and finally get a hold of it and grab it, I will have a lock on eternal happiness. And the old cat said, well, I never had the privilege to go to cat philosophy school like you did, but I've learned the same thing out here in the alleys, that indeed the most important thing for a cat is happiness, and that it is located in our tails. He said, the difference between you and I is that I found when I go about my business and do the things that are pleasing to me, it follows after me wherever I go. So there we are. That's, I think, all I've learned from cats in all my life, Jim. Sorry. What I want to do tonight is take you to a place where maybe you'll think about things in a way that you've not thought of them before. And I've had so much fun with this next chapter theme, and I've dissected it a lot of different ways, and I want us to look at it from a number of different angles and consider that. So there's another story of a philosophy professor at a college philosophy class, and I think it happens to be here in Minnesota. I think it's at the University of Minnesota, but just for the heck of it, let's say it's at UMD up in Duluth. It's in Duluth, a philosophy college class. And the philosophy professor tells his students, I want you to go out on the commons, and I want you to not come back until you have something profound to say. A profound idea, a profound original idea. And so he sends all these students out onto the commons, and after a while, one comes back and says, all you need is love. And he said, no, the Beatles already did that, and it didn't really work out. We're still killing each other, and besides, walk down the street wearing nothing but love and see how far you get. No, get back out there. So that student went away. And another student came back in, and another one came back in and said things, and he said, no, that's not That's not an important, meaningful, profound thing to say. And finally, a student came back in and said, there are no ordinary moments. And he said, now that is an important, profound thing to keep in mind. And so I really want to bring that into this room tonight. There are no ordinary moments. Some of you may be thinking about an animal that needs to go to the vet. You might be thinking about that appliance at home, then trying to get the repairman out to fix it, or things going on with your children, or schedule, or something at work, or the bills to be paid, and all of those things. But those don't exist right now. They're just simply wispy thoughts. All that's real is this moment. And it's unique. We'll not be the same people tomorrow when we wake up that we are right now. We'll never be together at this moment in time in the way that we are now. So this evening is our next chapter. It doesn't have to be any grand when I get this, or when something happens, or when I retire, or some big point on the horizon. This is our next chapter that we will write this evening. And the thing that I think is profound about that is that it keeps us in the here and now. We live in the here and now instead of the there and then. And so in a way, everything is the next chapter or nothing is. And there are no ordinary moments. So just think about that, the people that are around you tonight and this time. And so I want to make this our evening. And I invite you, thank you for your participation already on the question. And I want to hear from you, and we'll have a couple people with mics around. And rather than, one of my core values is nonconformity, and I'm going to talk about that a little later this evening. But rather than just me sit up here and spew information at you and then see if you have any questions at the end, I'm going to stop from time to time and see if there's something that you want me to talk more about, or something that you have questions about, that we can sort of engage and make this our interactive evening, our next chapter. Recently, I was introduced to a woman named Bronnie Ware, W-A-R-E, first name Bronnie, B-R-O-N-N-I-E. Are you nodding your head? She's an Australian, and some years ago, she was out of work in Australia, and she needed something to do. And someone she knew had a loved one who was going into hospice care, who was at the end of their life, the last few weeks of their life, and they needed someone to be with this person and care for them. And so she took that job. And then not too long after that, she had another opportunity to do the same thing. And she discovered that for her, this was a calling. This was her purpose, to be with these people as they finish their last chapters. And so for 8 years, she worked with hundreds of people in the last 3 to 12 weeks of their life. And what she realized was these people have amazing lessons to teach us as they're looking back and preparing to leave this plane. And she began to interview them, and she began to take copious notes on what they had to say on their experience. And she learned that the majority of people, the vast majority of them, had serious regrets about the way they had lived their life as they looked back. And she discovered that 5 regrets kept coming up over and over and over again. And so she's the author of a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And I want to share with you what those regrets are that people had in order that they came up as she was talking to these people. The number one regret that these people had was, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Now, I've talked to a person here in the Twin Cities who works in hospice care, and they told me in their experience, for men, that would be number 1. And I'll tie back into that shortly, because I don't know that it's about working so hard. I think it's working so hard on the wrong things and for the wrong reasons. Number 3, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. It's that John Mayer song, say what you need to say. Better to say too much than never to say what you need to say again. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends, and I wish I'd let myself be happier. And so the reason I share this with you, because it occurred to me after I learned of this work, that my work is about trying to help people live in such a way that they don't have those regrets when they get to the end of their lives. And no matter where we are on that spectrum of happiness, or with these regrets, or where we are in the age of our bodies, or our careers, or anything, doesn't matter. We can change those things in an instant. Starting now. The next chapter begins when we decide to write a word on a new page. And that's it. Living on purpose is, and I'll read from you out of the book, Love Your Work, Live Your Dream. Here it is. And it is truly a guidebook. I've done a lot of research for this book. It is a guidebook with a lot of research in it. It's a lot of supporting thoughts for different concepts that I present. It's a lot of action items that we can do. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the supporting thoughts and the action items tonight because that's more appropriate for a multi-day workshop type environment. So I'm going to read some stories. Another one of my core values is storyteller. I believe in the powers of stories to illustrate concepts. And so I'm going to also share with you a few of the stories in the book. And yes, Arlo, the border collie, will be first. But speaking of this living on purpose, and when the right people show up, is anyone familiar with a book called Positive Intelligence by Shirzad Chamine? It's brilliant. He's done brilliant work. He was a Silicon Valley tech entrepreneur, rose to the top, white hot, on fire, building this tech company, and he became an impossible tyrant to work with. And there was basically an intervention by his own board of directors and his own executive staff that dethroned him in a very humiliating experience as he describes it. But out of that came his work of positive intelligence. And without going into it too much, he has identified, and he's researched this on 500,000 people in 50 countries, from CEOs to elite athletes to all kinds of people, that there are two parts of the brain always competing with each other. And in one part of the brain is where what he calls our saboteurs live. Those are the ones that give us our negative messages when we're dealing with a challenging environment or situation. On the other side is our sage voice, which is wise, which is positive, which is calm, which is serene, which will help us to be more effective. And he's brought this very effectively into the world of business, that this is good for business, to have people in touch with this so that they are more effective in a business environment. But the bigger thing, and it's sort of the same tree that I bark up, is that only by getting in touch with that sage side of ourselves can we feel like we're living on purpose. And only therein lies fulfillment. Otherwise, we're just working for money. It's just a transactional business. We may be doing well, but it's not going to feel like a purpose to us. And so I encourage you to read his work. It's really brilliant, and he has a lot of podcasts on Spotify, and he's just an amazing individual, and he has really developed this at a very scientific level. So I'm going to read from you a little bit at the very first of the book out of a note from the author. I believe the title of this book perfectly describes what you'll find in the following pages. The message I have to share with you. Love Your Work, Live Your Dream is a look at the profound impact of fulfillment in your vocation, living the greatest life you can envision for yourself, and the importance of connecting the dots between the two. This book can also serve as a virtual toolkit for your occupation to provide you with real meaning and not merely a source of income. The information within offers workable items to step into it, to help you gain clarity regarding what makes up your life vision and to step into it more fully. Love Your Work, Live Your Dream presents a pragmatic approach to ensuring that your work is a vehicle that provides the means for your dream to become reality. This book is, as the title suggests, a guidebook. Here's the template to attain fulfillment in your vocation while realizing your life vision. It is much like the map and compass depicted on the cover, which supplies all the information needed for you to reach your destination. In both cases, however, you will decide where you want to go, you will chart the course that will provide you the most enjoyable journey, and you will do what it takes to arrive there. Wherever you may be on your path to vocational fulfillment and realizing your life vision, this book is for you. One of the best pieces of advice I can offer involves self-honesty. Being honest with yourself anywhere along the path is fine. Just don't try to fool yourself. You won't be able to do so. Where we are now and what has led us up to this point are all okay. Wishing things were otherwise and lamenting about the past is counterproductive. The telling question is, what will I do going forward? This question marks the trailhead for the path to fulfillment. Beyond all that, love your work, live your dream is my wish for you. It is a wish that you may live your life on purpose, enjoying all aspects and moving passionately toward your dream. The confident knowledge that you are taking steps each day to realize your vision is, of itself, a dream come true. How many times have we heard the phrase, "It's the journey, not the destination"? Multiple times. However, I suggest the journey-destination dichotomy is not an either-or proposition. My desire for you is to have both a meaningful journey as well as the joy of reaching your destination. The great American writer Henry David Thoreau summed up the spirit of love your work, live your dream in this quote: "If one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours." Advancing confidently is such a powerful phrase. Let it resonate in you. It means your resolve is so strong that nothing and no one can affect it. Also consider the enormity of the words, "a success unexpected in common hours." This is a promise that if you advance confidently and set out to live your dream, you will have success beyond what you may have thought possible. Your success will be greater than you even expected. What an amazing experience this is, and it's just waiting for you to create. I want to take the liberty to rephrase this quote so it has the most personal application to your life. From now on, whenever you say this quote, either to yourself or out loud, say it this way: "If I advance confidently in the direction of my own dreams and endeavor to live the life which I have imagined, I will meet with a success unexpected in common hours." Hold this thought close, say it often, and be inspired by it. Now, back to our original question. What is the most important thing in life? I heard a few answers, and I appreciate your participation. And before I go into that, I want to invite anyone who would like to ask a question or to make a comment or to tell me anything that they would like me to try and address for them, or how may I serve you this evening? Yes, wait, we got an official mic runner. So everybody could hear. Thank you.
Can I take you back to the discussion of the book from the woman from Australia for a second? So, two questions. One is that did she happen to mention how many people told her that they didn't have any regrets, or didn't have any significant regrets? I think that would be interesting to know. And also, I wonder, and this is maybe the social scientist in me going crazy, but it seems to me that there needs to be some correlation between some of these results and maybe it's some sort of demographics or socioeconomic analysis about how they did. Like I imagine the person that said that he worked too hard probably did pretty well, right? And he wasn't necessarily thinking about, God, I wish I'd had another meal a day as opposed to two. or something like that. So, I mean, I think that was her set of data coming from a particular demographic that may not be necessarily one that was, as universal a conclusion as one might think?
Yes, yeah, thank you. And those are great questions. And if I understand right, you were wondering if there's a demographic component to those regrets, that maybe they were with certain people? Certain classes of people. Yeah, as I understand it, she worked with people from all classes of life, from people barely getting by economically to people who had been fabulously wealthy in there. And so I think it's, again, maybe not so much about, I get what you're saying, maybe that person who was so focused on accumulating stuff, and they look back and say, why did I do that? Why was my focus on all this money and all these things? And yet, it could be someone who didn't accumulate a lot of things that maybe tried to get to that point at the expense of spending time with their children or of pursuing their dreams. And so that I think what happens is a lot of times people end up with dreams sitting on the shelf that gathered dust their whole life, and they never took them down and dusted it off and moved beyond their work to living their dream. And I know that's a big sickness in America, and I'll talk about it shortly, that we identify so strongly with what we do for a living that sometimes we forget there's more to life than that that's not who we are, even though it's a big part. So thank you very much. Any others? Yes.
Well, I want to change my answer. So when you said before, what's the most important thing? I said family, but after listening to you talk, I think the reason I say family is maybe rooted in this more core value of purpose. And so to have a purpose and to live for my family, or to have a purpose to live for my community or whatever it is, I think deep down to have a purpose in life is really one of the most important things. And so if we're living for people or for whatever it is, that can be your family or your job or whatever, your earth, your town, whatever, your church. But it made me rethink my answer to include more things.
Yes, thank you. And good for you for that evolution in thought, just right on the spot there. And you're right, because how better to be an example for our family, whether that's our children or our spouse or our parents or our brothers and sisters, than by showing them that we are living on purpose. We're going to be a better mother or father. We're going to be a better spouse. We're going to be a better sister or son or daughter by living our purpose, because we will bring that fulfillment to everything we do. And that's contagious among people. That's where collective consciousness begins, and I think that's where the answer to a lot of our serious world problems lie. So thank you for that. Perfect segue. If I may, I'm going to dive into a little more reading, and then we'll stop again for some more questions. But thank you so much for your participation. So again, no right or wrong answers here. But so, by the way, quickly, Love Your Work, Live Your Dream is a 3-part book. The first part is called A Look at Life. Chapter 1 is called The Big Questions. Chapter 2 is My Moment of Revelation, which I'll read to you shortly, or parts of it. Chapter 3 is Your Life is Yours. Chapter 4 is Money, Road to Ruin or Pathway to Paradise. Chapter 5 is How It Goes Wrong. How do we end up at the end of our life with those regrets? How do we get on that treadmill so far from where we thought we wanted to be in life? And the other thing about the love your work part, yes, it can be our vocation during our career, but all of us work every day. If we've been retired for 20 years, we still get up and mow the grass. We still run the vacuum cleaner. We still paint the house. We still volunteer. We still have vocational pursuits and work that we do. And it's important that we know why that's meaningful. So, chapter 1, the big questions. What is the most important thing in life? Have you ever asked yourself this question? Let me stop right there, because I read already about the self-honesty. So, in the spirit of self-honesty, how many of you, if you're willing to share with me, have never seriously thought about that question and become very clear on your answer? What's the most important thing in life? Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate your honesty. With this questions and others we'll be addressing in this chapter, it's really important to think about and develop your answers. This is your life, and it matters. Furthermore, to attain the feeling of living a purposeful life, you must answer the big questions for yourself and know the values that define who you are. These values create an internal flow chart for you to make decisions consistent with your unique identity. It is amazing how many people I talk to regarding this question who haven't really asked it of themselves, put little, if any, thought into it, and aren't clear on their answer. Regarding the first big question, which is the biggest question, what is the most important thing in my life? In my view, it is the ability to enjoy life every day. The essence of fulfillment lives in this simple tenet. By enjoying each day of your life, even those that sometimes get labeled as bad or shouldn't be this way, you get the most out of the time you are given here on earth. Moreover, you bring that ability to your life, making every day wonderful and affecting those around you most positively. You probably know people like this, and when you are around them, you sense the presence of a special person. Consider people who possess this quality. Not only do they exude positive attitudes about the things in their lives that go their way, but they also see the positive in challenging situations. Although they certainly don't celebrate such things as sickness, death, loss of jobs, or other such events, they are able to find opportunity for growth, to show themselves how strong they are, and to understand that there is always beauty and kindness to behold, even in the most difficult circumstances. The second part of the biggest question is how to go about creating a life that you enjoy every day. The answer is as individual as each person. However, I suggest it lies somewhere in doing the things that facilitate loving your work and living your dream. I encourage you to find the answer for the biggest question and to weave that answer into the fabric of your life. So, sir, what was your name, please? Bart. Bart, I have one hardcover copy that I'd like to give to you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for your honesty. So when I say the ability to enjoy your life every day is the most important thing in your life, to me, that is not an end unto itself. That's a barometer. That's a gauge of fulfillment. If we are fulfilled human beings living on purpose, following our intuition, free of worry about how it's going to work out or what anybody else thinks of it, living the life that's true to us, not the ones that others expect of us, we will enjoy life every day. So it's a good gauge of how we're doing in fulfillment, of living our own unique purpose for being on this earth. So, I'm going to read a little bit about when I was a young man. I was 22 years old, living in Bozeman, Montana, going to Montana State University. And a border collie dog named Arlo changed my life. And I had, in a moment, like I talked to you about, in an instant that I'll read to you about, I decided that I would follow my intuitions for the rest of my life. And I have done so. I lived in Montana for 20 years. I've lived in Florida for 7 years. I lived in New Mexico for 7 years. I lived in Colorado, back in Colorado, since 2016. And I came sight unseen, bought a piece of land in northern Itasca County in Minnesota, and just completed a project with a house, and we'll show some slides of it shortly here, and turned a vision into reality because my intuition said, go live the up north, kayak paddling, north woods, peaceful, private, waterfront lifestyle. So that intuition, when we're talking about living on purpose, and a lot of people say, how do I know what my purpose is? And I say that intuition is that wise counsel that we so often discount because it's our own and because it may be different than what society says to do. The marketing gurus don't want you to do your own thing. They want you to do what they want you to do so they can sell you what they're trying to sell you. And they get you to believe that that's where happiness lies, but it doesn't. That's like trying to find the Grand Canyon in Florida. You won't find it there because that's not where it is. Fulfillment doesn't exist in material things. If you want to see the Grand Canyon, go to Arizona. If you want to be fulfilled, go inside and listen to your intuition. I've heard it said, and I love this, that if prayer is us talking to God, intuition is God talking to us. And the only way I know to receive it is in silence. I wake up every day at 5 a.m., and for an hour, from about 5:30 to 6:30, I sit there with coffee and my little golden retriever, Roz, curled up at my feet, and I get quiet. And I see what messages come. And I have a long track record of trusting in that process. And I decided in a moment that I would do that. And so what I write about is how I've lived my life. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but it's given me a life beyond anything I could have thought possible at that moment of revelation. My own dejected sigh was the only sound in the air as I watched my gloved hands released from the steering wheel of my vehicle, a 1972 Jeep Commando. Burnt orange in color, the Jeep was teetering off the side of the road and now stuck in the snow. I'd owned this four-wheel drive rig for some time, and suffice it to say, it was in less than top operating condition. Logic, or at least what passed for my logic at that time in my life, had led me to surmise that duct tape and baling wire were standard equipment on all Jeep Commandos. The scene above took place in the Gallatin Valley of southwest Montana, which had recently been hit by a significant snowstorm. I can't speak to the reference point these days, but back then we considered significant snow to be a foot or more. After the storm subsided, I needed, or more accurately wanted, to get somewhere for an event that was extremely important to me. That event? Hanging out with my friends. As my knees crunched down into the snow and I began to dig out one of the buried tires with my hands, it occurred to me that my Jeep Commando was the perfect metaphor for where I was in my life. This vehicle and I were peers, kindred spirits, twin sons of different mothers. I was 22 years old, the Commando a few years younger. As with the Commando, my life was in a ditch. I was mired not in snow, however, but in a drift of confusion. I, too, was spinning my wheels. I was getting nowhere. My life also seemed to be held together with duct tape and baling wire. To add salt to the wound, I had something bothering me, something that kept gnawing at my conscience. As I was trying to dig out of the ditch, I couldn't get my mind off the 2 dogs I'd lost over the past week. Indeed, within the space of just 7 days, I'd lost 2 dogs. My Alaskan Malamute Chinook had been stolen. My yellow lab puppy, Harold, had been accidentally poisoned. The echoes of anguish from within me were voices in a dark cavern. I was enrolled in the time at Montana State University in Bozeman. Having meandered in and out of 3 universities and as many majors over the past few years, all on my father's dime, I had little confidence in any decision I was making. The truth is that I wanted to take some time after high school just to figure out what I might like to do. But my dad had been insistent that I go straight to college, study, learn some discipline, get a degree, and then I could backpack around Europe or whatever tickled my fancy. I succumbed to his pressure and went on to college. You see the theme here of living the life that's someone else. But I was there mostly in body and body only. College was a waste of his money and my time. Out of a sense of duty, I continued to coast along to get along. Most little boys and girls have an innate desire to make daddy proud. For some of us, that desire becomes more subconscious as we move into adulthood, but it remains a powerful influence on our psyche. That's how it was in my case. Outwardly, I wore a badge of independence and originality. Inside, however, I still wanted to make Daddy proud. More acute was some yearning for self-esteem I assumed would come along with the feeling that he wasn't disappointed in me. My life was an internal tug-of-war between marching to the beat of my own drum and conforming to societal standards of which my father would approve. The manifestation of this tug-of-war was outward rebellion and inward resentment. My dad and I butted heads like 2 bighorn rams in that way that makes you cringe when you witness it. Unlike the majestic sheep that almost always emerged unscathed from their domestic contests, we were inflicting serious emotional injuries on each other. If our battle had continued too much longer, we were both bound to sustain wounds which might never heal. I have since learned that living a life based on trying to get the approval of others, any others, is a recipe for misery. Although I wasn't capable of such profound self-reflection then, I was soon to have an epiphany brought about in a most unexpected way. I've never subscribed to the notion of some mournful grace period between losing one dog and getting another. I'm not putting that concept down. It's just not how I've chosen to live my life. So even amidst the heartbreak of losing Chinook and Harold, I was considering my next dog. Eventually, I decided to get a Border Collie puppy. Highly intelligent and very athletic, a Border Collie is also the perfect size for a road trip in a Jeep Commando, so I felt I'd checked all the boxes. Soon, I was on my way to Bridger, Montana for the sole purpose of picking a pup. I found a notice about a litter of Border Collie puppies posted on a bulletin board of the local feed store and recall driving to Bridger in the dark of the evening, a trip that took several hours. In Montana, getting anywhere from anywhere takes several hours. It's a big place with not many people. There's a saying that in Big Sky country, if it's not more than 100 miles, don't bother turning on the radio. Well, I had the radio on. Unlike my dysfunctional cassette player, the radio did work, and I took advantage of it during the long drive. I arrived at the ranch where the Border Collie puppies were spending their first few weeks. Up to the entryway I walked and rapped the big wooden door with the knuckles of my right hand. The door opened, and I met the couple who owned the ranch and had bred the litter. Following some quick introductions, the couple led me down into their basement where the litter was squirming around in a plywood box amidst several fluffy blankets. The nest provided a cozy spot for the female Border Collie and her pups, which numbered 6. I bent down and interacted with the dam of the litter, who was beautiful, friendly, and bright, while the ranch owners brought all the pups out onto the concrete floor of the basement. The whelps relished the liberation from their box. As I sat on the floor, the little guys and gals would come up to me, sniff, chew, wag, climb, and exhibit all the other behaviors that make a litter of puppies one of the most wonderful things I know. Now, classic Border Collie markings include a full white collar. However, there was a single wee one who had just a white spot centered on the back of his neck. He came scurrying up to me, excited and happy acting, but not wildly so. Quickly, he curled up in my lap, lay there for a moment, and then looked at me as if he were asking what I thought of him. It took mere seconds before I stated with a quiet knowing to the couple, "This is my puppy." They agreed that this particular dog and I were clearly a natural fit. In short order, I was on my way back home with my new canine companion curled up in a blanket on the Commando's passenger seat. I drove mostly with my left hand on the steering wheel as my right hand was occupied petting this little furball, trying to assure him that he was in good care. At one point, I pulled down a gravel road and let the tiny fellow out to do his business. The moon was full, and when reflected on the snow, made everything bright enough so that I could see the landscape almost as well as in full daylight. It quickly occurred to me that the pup was exploring a world he couldn't even know existed from inside the plywood box in the ranch house basement I'd just visited. As beautiful and memorable as the scene was, it gave no hint of what was to come. This dog, this one dog, would soon reveal to me a world I could not fathom from the basement box perspective in which I'd been living my own life. I named this puppy Arlo, and he would change my life forever. As Arlo approached adulthood, he showed his strong herding instincts by trying to round up neighborhood cats. Of course, the cats were not interested in Arlo or anything he was trying to communicate to them. I didn't know it right away, but I was witnessing the power of the instinct for a working-bred Border Collie to herd livestock. It is an amazing thing to behold and must be seen to be fully appreciated. Perhaps the best way I can describe it is that a dog like Arlo can't not do it. But I didn't know what to do or what not to do at that time. My quest to help Arlo follow in the paw prints of his ancestors started when I discovered that Montana State had a sheep research station just a few miles outside Bozeman. I also learned that the manager there was an experienced sheepdog trainer. I was intrigued. A little voice in my head said, "Sounds cool, let's go." Unannounced, I drove out and met the trainer, a very pleasant man named Don. I explained that I was there to talk with him about getting Arlo around some sheep so he could do his thing. Don looked at me with a perplexed expression to which I'd gotten quite accustomed. As it turned out, however, Don wasn't judging me. He was only slightly less conventional than I, which enabled him to seriously consider my idea. In Don's view, spending time with a hippie college student who was offering cash donations to the Save the Neurotic Border Collies campaign was an experience not to be missed. Oh, one more thing about my life at that time. Have I mentioned that I was living in a teepee? In my mind, of course, teepee dwelling year-round in a teepee was the way to go. About a year prior, I had purchased a used teepee from my hippie college buddy, Tom, who had decided that year-round teepee dwelling in Montana wasn't the way to go. With convincing rationalizations, he had decided that year-round yurt dwelling in Montana was far more sensible. So he made the move, and his hard-earned moniker, Teepee Tom, faded from existence forever. The result was that the teepee became my humble abode, Arlo's too. So it was from that teepee that I would drive Arlo to see Don at the sheep research station outside the town for sheepdog training lessons. After Don and I had struck a deal and we set a time for us to take our first class, we pulled up to the house where Don lived, and the commando sputtered to a halt. I stomped on the emergency brake pedal, hopped out, walked to the other side of the vehicle, opened the passenger door, clipped a leash onto Arlo's collar, and summoned him out. Don approached and explained how the lesson would go. He had 7 sheep in a small grassy paddock. Don would stay on the outside of the paddock fence while I took Arlo inside and did exactly as Don instructed. As Don was speaking, I looked down at Arlo. Although the paddock was not visible from where we stood, Arlo stared straight toward it with an intensity I'd never before seen in this young dog. We walked toward the paddock, the sheep came into view, and I saw Arlo's intensity double, then triple. I was tempted to ask at that moment, "Who are you and what have you done with my dog?" I simply didn't know what was happening. Slowly, and entirely unsure about what I was about to witness, I stepped into the paddock with Arlo. The sheep immediately came to attention and looked at my border collie with an intensity that rivaled his. Arlo was frozen in place, his front left paw lifted slightly off the ground like a bird dog in the field. The time had come. I reached down, I took in my dog's intense expression, I unhooked his leash. When I let Arlo loose with the sheep at that first session, I unleashed destiny. When that little dog approached the flock, something awakened in him that had been there since the beginning of time, but had lain dormant until that very moment. He crouched down, his chest just inches off the ground. He eyed the sheep with the laser focus that only herding dogs possess, and commenced a combination of walk-crawl up to the flock. His movements were so slow and deliberate that he appeared to have partial paralysis. It was eerily beautiful to behold. The ewes began to move away from him in a fast walk. As soon as they did, Arlo made a precise, lightning-quick 90-degree right turn. He shot around the sheep in a perfect arc at a speed I didn't know he possessed. He stopped on a dime, eyed the sheep again, and then crept up on the flock with a look that said, "What's it going to be, ladies?" The ewes made a compliant 180-degree turn and walked straight my way. When they were halfway between Arlo and me, my dog laid down, the sheep stopped, and one of them reached down for a nibble of grass. I couldn't speak. I had to process what I'd just seen. As I digested what had just happened before me, I turned my head to look at Don, expecting him to deliver complex instructions on what I was to do next. He looked at me and whispered one word, "Wow." Minutes later, Don would explain in earnest that he had never seen a sheepdog conduct itself so perfectly with no prior experience or training. When he was done telling me, all I could say was, "Wow." As I'd watched Arlo work the sheep that day, something had awakened in me. At that point, for the first time in my life, I knew I had a calling. It wasn't a thought or an idea, it was a knowing. The clarity of this knowing came to me instantaneously. I felt inner peace with the knowledge right then and there that I had found my purpose in life. I would work with sheep and I would train sheepdogs. It was the most natural feeling, void of any concern about how it would work out, what anyone would think about it, or where it would lead. Before that day, I had never even been this close to a sheep. I knew nothing about them except how I'd learned that day that it felt good to be around them. I wanted to learn everything I could about these amazing creatures. They were so graceful, not too big and not too small, and they produced wool, the fiber that human beings have been wearing for millennia. I could smell the lanolin in the sheep's wool, and I still love that aroma to this day. I can't explain it exactly, but the whole scene brought me to conclude that this was what I was meant to do. I felt at this moment it was something I can't not do. In actuality, my soul just finally cried, freedom. I decided then and there that I would, for the rest of my days, follow such callings. I have done so and continue to do so to this day. Since coming to this conclusion, my life has been an adventure beyond anything I could conjure. On that first day, I stood in the pasture with Arlo, the sheep, and my own realization. Amazingly, my father didn't share my enthusiasm when I announced that I was leaving college to become a sheep herder. Now, I'm not recommending anyone to drop out of college. For many, college is their calling, and that's wonderful. But college simply wasn't for me. My decision and my dad's reaction to it drove a pretty big wedge between us that existed for quite a while. My father did come around eventually, however. He saw what I was doing. He watched how I was making progress. He would become proud of what I accomplished after striking out on my own, and he told me so on numerous occasions. In fact, he ended up being far more proud of me once I let go of trying to make him proud and started pursuing my own dream. We became very close before he passed, for which I am filled with gratitude. It's ironic how those who aggressively seek approvals from others don't get much approval. Then they find themselves striving for that approval even harder, and the cycle continues. This cycle is guaranteed to produce nothing but misery and disappointment in life. Conversely, those who follow their callings and don't crave the approval of others end up receiving plenty of approval, even though they don't need it. They're just living their own dream. I went on to become a professional sheepdog trainer, handling scores of fine dogs and winning numerous awards alongside them. Training dogs, along with going on to become a sheep rancher, were life-changing experiences and provide me, to this day, with some of my fondest memories. Since then, my work has evolved, and it's fair to say I've been engaged in several careers. I've lived in numerous diverse locales around the U.S. and treasure my memories of those places as well. Life for me has been and continues to be a grand adventure. Given my own experience, I highly recommend that everyone follow their calling as opposed to living their lives based on what someone else says to do or what someone else may think. I also proclaim to everyone, dare to risk. Those willing to take a risk, trusting that it will work out, realize more success, achievement, friendships, and happiness than what is possible by playing it safe. Remember, the greatest risk of all is never taking one. You may or may not have such revelatory instances in your life as I had on that Montana field with Arlo, but I treasure the gift of that moment and have drawn on it every day since then. That's why my message to you is this: be open to your callings in whatever form they take. Most of all, listen, and then answer them with a resounding yes. Your adventurous and fulfilling life awaits. So lean right into it. And I think there's something in there for all of us to follow our own callings. And I'm sure all of you have had those moments. And I think the important thing is to pay attention to them, to answer and trust in those. And yeah, there's risk in it. The display quote for the whole book says, "Some people doubt and set their dreams aside, while others dream and set their doubts aside." You know, some of the greatest endeavors that have ever happened in humanity, Lewis and Clark, John Glenn, these people took the risks, knowing what the consequences could be, and yet they had to go and check it out. They followed those callings, and I think that that's what makes each individual life memorable, unique, and fulfilling. So we just have a couple minutes left. I was going to see if Joel might want to show a couple of slides. Oh, yeah. So this is my next chapter, my latest chapter. So my intuition said, come to northern Minnesota. I did an internet search and found a realtor, the right guy. He's fourth generation from northern Itasca County, knows everybody. This is who you want to build your house. This is who you want to do the excavation, one of those. We had a 2-hour conversation. I bought 80 acres on a beautiful, peaceful, private lake, surrounded by state land, sight unseen, and had a vision. And could we go back just a minute, please? So that was June of 2021. I bought it in January 2021. Literally, that's the machine walking into dense woods to clear the driveway. Next slide, please. Yeah, and literally just walked down there and started clearing the way. Next. There's the driveway roughed in. So in February of 2022, I bought Roz from a breeder of working bred golden retrievers in Fremont, Nebraska, and she's out in the truck this evening. She goes with me everywhere. So that's Roz. There's the house, and all the land across the lake is state land, so there'll never be a house or never be a light there. Very peaceful, very private. Lots of beautiful wildlife to view up there. And of course, the loons. I've fallen in love with the loons and done a lot of research on them. It's just amazing to me being here. There's Roz and I out on the lake in a kayak. She would live in the water if given a choice. There's a picture of my cabin from the water. And just week before last, I closed out the construction account, and they put the gutters on the shop, and it's done. There's Roz out on the boat. We ride on the boat almost every day, and I'll be up there about 2/3 of the time, year-round. That's home. And there she is in the bedroom at night with the beautiful light out on the water, and that's the view that I see every evening from my bedroom window. So the reason I show you this is that was a vision that once existed only in my mind. I would sit in my house in Colorado, and in my mind, I wasn't in Colorado. I was up there. I didn't know the specifics of what it all was, but I already had Roz at that time, and I visualized being in that cabin with her curled up at my feet, a pitter-patter, cold rain falling outside, drinking coffee, the fire going, and now I see it with my mind every day. And I'm one among. I'm nothing special. But my message is if I can do it, anyone can do it. It's just a matter of trusting in that intuition and following it and detaching from worry about what other people think. I think that's one of the things that happens so much to us is that we get concerned. Believe me, every time I've made one of these moves, there's plenty of people that will tell me how crazy I am. And I can't afford to listen to that. If I feel like I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing here, I just have to go and let go of that. So I hope that's been inspirational. I want to finish with this. So before I read this, I just wanted to quickly talk about fulfillment and offer my favorite definition of it. So I make a distinct difference between happiness and fulfillment. When I see Roz's tail wag, I'm happy. When the Minnesota Wild win the game, I'm happy. Happiness can be about something big, it can be about something small, but it's basically a sort of a feeling that exists based on something going on. Fulfillment is much deeper, and that's what I think I mentioned the word fulfillment in this book 60 times. And to me, that's what the fully lived life is all about. And my very favorite definition of fulfillment is happiness or satisfaction as the result of fully developing one's character and abilities. And that's for me. That's what I want to do. I want to fully develop my character, my values, and the abilities that I've been given to serve others, including myself, to try and make the world a better place, to take that energy everywhere I go and be a positive influence to family and friends and you and anyone and everyone, all living things. And I'll tell a quick story. I know we're a little bit over time, but if you'll indulge me. So about a year ago, I was speaking at the Denver Press Club. And I was talking, the whole talk was about happiness versus fulfillment. And one of the things is when we talk about fully developing our character and abilities, that's not an end point. It's not like, okay, I fully developed everything, now I'm done. We never get there. So when we take that first step, when we write that first word on our next chapter, whatever it is, we are fully developing our character abilities. I write about beginner's bliss. Embrace the beginning of the journey when we don't know what we're doing and we don't have all we need and we make all those ignorant beginner mistakes. Don't rush through that. That's a beautiful experience to be relished. And so I was talking about we can begin fully developing our character and abilities right now. And I asked the group, is there somebody that could share about fully developing something they could do today to start on that road to fulfillment? And there's a woman in the audience there who's a very prominent surgeon in Denver, very prominent. And she said, I save people's lives. I know how my work as a surgeon helps people, but I'm a gifted artist. And in my attic is lots of art equipment and half-finished paintings and easels with blank canvases. And I have 2 different friends that each have an art gallery, and they've been at me for years to get some art completed and put it in their galleries. And that's something that I could do. And I said, well, that's a wonderful story. And I thanked her for sharing that. And so I finished up, and after the presentation, she came up to me and she said, I decided tonight that I'm going to cut back on my surgery practice. I'm making a lot of money and all that, but I'm owned by it. And that dream of pursuing my art is really important. And you made me realize that what if one of my art pieces could inspire someone to go do their calling, and they could develop a cure for cancer or whatever it is? That's another way that I can help people. Most of all, I need to do that to be who I was brought here to be. And she had tears in her eyes. And it was so profoundly touching to me that she had decided in her moment of revelation right then, I'm going to cut back on my surgery practice and I'm going to do my art, and take it more serious. And so that's what I would encourage you to do, is to follow those callings. Don't leave those dreams sitting on the shelf. Don't doubt and set your dreams aside. Dreams and set your doubts aside. And I'll finish with this, and then we'll go to questions. And your best life awaits. Visualize it. Ask yourself the big questions. Dare to dream and set your doubts aside. Answer your calling. Take risks. Trust your intuition. Advance confidently and do whatever it takes. Embrace your beginner's bliss. Connect the dots. Be the best version of you. Pursue your vision. Embrace the adventure and follow your dream. Therein lies fulfillment. May you be fulfilled. Thank you.
I think we have a few minutes for questions, if anyone else has questions. All right. Bart, do you want to get that? Yep, put there. And so while Bart's doing that, you're giving us a lot to take away from this tonight, so I want to give you this to take away from us.
Oh, thank you very much.
It's a leather portfolio with Next Chapter and Wayzata Community Church on it.
Thank you very much.
So
Appreciate that.
that'll let you think of us.
Thank you. And yeah, Rachel will be manning a table back there. If anyone would like to pick up a copy of books, we have them available, and I'm happy to sign any copies back there after we adjourn here. So, yes.
Clark?
Yes.
And it is working. Your spot there, right there on the screen, Minnesota. How did Minnesota come into your mind there? What is it about you that your experience that led up to Minnesota's where I got to go?
Yeah, that's a great question. I grew up in Colorado Springs in the 1970s. And Colorado in the 70s was an amazing place to be, and it's changed vastly. I went back in 2016, and it felt to me like that old saying, you can't go home again. Things had changed so much on the Front Range of Colorado from when I grew up there. And I decided I wanted to be around some place that was greener with more water. That's what my intuition kind of said. And so I came to Minnesota on an exploratory trip, and I felt so good to see the green here. And I started to meet the people, and the people here are Minnesota nice. They're nice in Colorado too, but they're special here. And the whole thing, and once the hook is in, that's it. Because otherwise it's just talk. And so once it came to me and I said, yeah, that could be a chapter for me. Up north, canoe paddling, kayak paddling, boat riding, exploring all these lakes, get me a, golden retriever and do it. And so that's it. Once that gets to me, I've got to go. I have to go. Otherwise, I'm leaving that dream on the shelf. So that was kind of in a nutshell, the backstory of it. Yeah. Yes.
So perhaps we need to hear more about your life, but I think your story has been conspicuously single, and certainly in my life, the most important trade-offs have been driven by two-career couple situations. So neither of us were able fully to do what you did, and we had to always struggle for some sort of compromise. So do you have any views about that?
So I think I understood your question is, how does the dynamic in a couple work if you have one of these intuitions? Yeah, so for sure, in that now we've got a shared vision. So we have to find the common ground. And that's as unique as each couple. I've seen everything and I've experienced everything from one saying, wherever you go is where I'm going to go, the man or the woman, or to, we got to figure this out. We got to work together. I'm open to it, but we've got to look at some things. And so maybe we start part-time, or maybe we do life in two places, or something to find that middle ground. So yeah, I think that just dives into the relationship dynamics. But obviously, if that love exists, then it's going to be, how can I be the person to realize my dream, and yet a big part of my dream is being the partner that I need to be as well. And there's always a solution. There's always a middle ground. Where there's a will, there's a way. So I've known couples that said, we'll go try this for a couple of years. We can always go back. I'm willing to try that if that's something really important to you. I think the most beautiful relationships I ever see is when both say, whatever's important to you is important to me. And that's how we'll go with it. And I will support your dreams, and you support my dreams, and we'll see where they take us. And we'll go, we won't choose either or. We'll have both. So, yeah, it's easier said than done sometimes. But, yeah, it's a good point, and obviously it needs to be considered. But I do believe that there's a beautiful way that all of that can be handled in a relationship, and still each individual be fulfilled. But very good question. Thank you.
Anything
Yes.
else? Oh, okay, I got it.
Well, I just want to reflect. Even saying this is a little scary because I think we have this humility. If we have a big dream, at least speaking for myself, I often have thought, well, who am I to think that I could actually do this? And, again, some of you know I ran for state office, and when I felt like this was a calling for me, I had this inner voice say, well, who am I to think I could do that? But yet I had a real calling, and I remember feeling like I said to my husband, I have to do this. And I did, and it was a big sacrifice for my family, and it was terrifying to actually be so, just to be so public, and you have to come out, and you have to acknowledge what your political beliefs are. But yet it was such a calling. I want to acknowledge your courage, because sometimes doing some of these things take a huge amount of courage. And it was really scary for me. And I'm thinking that it was probably really scary for you, but for me, I did it, and I did serve in the legislature, and it was so worth it. But it was also so terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. And there's so much thought of, what am I doing? Like, could be so embarrassing and so humiliating and so wrong, but you also have to trust your inner feeling that this is my calling, and maybe even if I fail, it's still my calling to do it. So maybe if you could talk about did you have any doubts? Did you ever think, what if I moved to here and it's the wrong thing?
Yeah, just because I set them aside doesn't mean they don't follow me around and nag me from time to time. Great point, absolutely. The fear and the doubt, the what in the world am I doing, taking on this project? What am I, a glutton for punishment again? I just built this place in Colorado. Now I'm going to come up here and go through this 2 years of building and, and all of that. Yeah, the doubt. Some dark times. Doubt, wondering, what am I doing? Why am I bringing all this on? And you know what? For me, that is where I find out where my true friends are. Those are the people I can call up that say, if you don't, you're not living your adventure. What are you going to do? Stay here and play it safe? Go. Enjoy the journey. All of it. Stumbling still counts as forward progress. Yeah. And the other thing I would say is I think a great mindset in that is there is no such thing as failure. We only produce results. If you run for office and don't get elected and you get blown out, you did not fail. You produced a result. Now the question is, what do you do with the results you produced? Are you going to say, well, politics just isn't for me, I can't win? Or are you going to say, I still feel the calling, and I think if we did this or that, or maybe I'll run for county, local first, and then move my way up, or whatever it is, I will figure this out. This is a lesson. We don't bring baggage, we bring lessons. So yeah, the fear, the doubt, the loneliness, the what in the heck am I doing? But yet, I knew that I would get here. I walk up to the barista at Caribou, and they have their name badge on Natalie, and I say, hi, Natalie, I'm Clancy. And the next thing you know, she's showing me pictures of her golden retriever or whatever, and now I know someone in Minnesota. I came here not knowing anybody but my realtor and the builders and all, and now I'm developing a circle of friends, and I think, my father was an entrepreneur's entrepreneur, and he was a majority shareholder in over 50 different companies in his career, in 12 different industries. And he would sometimes get his head ripped off. I mean, he was a real wildcatter. And sometimes he was rolling in the chips. I mean, talk about a risk taker. And he told me something that stuck with me. He said, there is no security in a stable job with a pension. There is no security in a whole bunch of money in the bank. There is no security in anything other than in your confidence in yourself, that you can go anywhere, land on your feet, make connections, and be successful. That's the only security you will ever have, is your own belief in yourself and your ability to do things. And so now you've proven it. You can do it. So yeah, the fear, the doubt are there. But again, I can let those go and replace them with a thought that serves me. That. Just keep going, it's out there. Just keep one foot in front of the other. And the other saying I like is I don't focus on what I'm going through, I focus on what I'm going to. I keep the end point in mind. I'm going to get there. And nothing will stop me if it's what I believe I'm meant. The other thing is when it's my purpose and when it's meant to be, things do fall into place. Even with the overwhelming amount of moving parts and all that, things do fall into place. If it's an absolute brick wall, then I pay attention to that. I may have misinterpreted my intuition, and it may not be what I'm meant to be doing. So in other words, I may get all down this trail and get cut all to pieces in the brambles and everything, and then come up here and go, oh, this one's like lined with rose petals, and it's soft, and there's water stops and everything. And but I had to go down there to know that. So that's not failure. That's just part of the whole journey. Yes?
You look like a pretty young man.
Your check
I'm not
is in the
saying
mail.
Pretty, I mean, you look like you are still a young man. And your bio says that you are a successful salesman. I'd like to know what did you love before you made what appears to be a transition here?
I still do work that I developed in sales. So I had 3 decade-long careers in agribusiness sales. In Montana, I sold nutritional supplements, feed supplements to cattle ranchers. And I traveled the western half of Montana. And when I lived in Florida, I worked with agronomy. I worked with fertilizer efficiency and crop nutrients, working with the citrus and the sugarcane plantations and the vegetable growers and all of that. And then when I was in New Mexico, I developed a book of business as a dairy nutritionist, working with the large commercial dairy farms. And I still travel to New Mexico every 3 weeks and spend 3 days. I still feed a whole bunch of dairy cows down there. So each one of those times, I developed a book of business from 0 sales in a down market, not knowing anybody, not being one of the good old boys. And the way that I did that, and it's the theme of my book, Selling by Serving, was placing service to other people ahead of chasing quotas and commissions. I have woken up every day for 30 years and said, I'm going to go help somebody today. I'm going to meet people, I'm going to make friends, and I'm going to help someone. And I'm proud of that. And so many salespeople are ashamed of what they do because of the old stereotypes. But I'm going to figure a way to be helpful and bring value to that operation, and at some point I'll get my chance. And so I've risen to the top of these organizations and been very, very successful. I've been a life coach for about 20 years, so this platform that I launched in 2020 with my writing and speaking is a natural evolution of my life coaching and my desire to help people just be happier and more fulfilled human beings. So yeah, that's my sales career. Yes?
Clark, you said a few minutes ago that you're always going to somewhere. Talk about how clearly and how specifically you've defined where you're going to.
Well, the only place I know I'm going is back there to that table to sign books in a few minutes. I'm not guaranteed to make it back to my apartment in Tonka Bay. That's why there are no ordinary moments. This is what's real. So as far as the big picture, Minnesota, I have no idea. I may take my dying breath there. I may sell it in 5 years.
But you defined exactly what that looked like.
Yep.
You knew what that looked like. And so when you got there, but you had defined it in fairly great detail of what does that look like and where to make it.
Yeah, no, I didn't know the design of the house until I got with a draftsman out of Minneapolis online while I was living in Colorado. We designed the house and I found the builders. And so I didn't know specifically, but I had a vision of a lakefront property, a pitter-patter rain, and I knew the check boxes that I wanted, a private lake and plenty of land and these type of things. And so I saw an image, but I didn't see all the detail. But I saw the image, and then that's part of the fun of it, is to see how it actually ends up doing, what color it is and what appliances and all that kind of stuff. Yes?
Last question, and then we've got refreshments. We invite you to stay and have some fellowship, and of course, Clancy will be selling his books at the table right outside the door.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's so inspirational, and I'm excited to talk to my guy on the way home and see what we both got out of it. You talked about brick walls and misinterpreting intuition, the possibility of doing that. Do you have any stories from your experience where that happened to you? I know that I struggle with my intuition and really work hard to follow it at this point in my life. But anyway, yeah, I'm wondering if you ever got tripped up in kind of a big way and had to make a right turn.
Wow, that's a really good question. I'm sure there are. I think they're more small than major. In other words, they might be little wrong turns on the right overall path. They might be wrong exits on the interstate, if you will. I don't have anything where I thought something was definitely for sure going to work out a certain way. Now, I've been married and divorced twice. So in there have been mistakes. There have been some things that I thought were true that turned out not to be true. I had a part in those. I've had to look at my part in those. And so some of that. But again, the thing I would tell you is that that's all happened for a reason. I don't know what that reason is, but it has happened for a reason. And so what I try and do every time anything happens that's a big challenge is, how can I learn from this and how can I grow? Don't play the victim mentality. Don't get to be wrapped up in myself. How can I use this to be a better Clancy going forward? Not repeat those mistakes the next time. And so, yeah, all I can say is, if we continue to do this and do our best to follow our intuition, we will be taken care of. We will be more than taken care of, and abundance will flow into our life in every single way. So all I say is advance confidently.
So thanks again, Clancy. Thanks
Thanks
for you
to all
guys
of you.
coming. Hopefully we'll see you in January.